I also just have to say, because I don't think Russell Wilson was ever that great of a quarterback. And maybe most people know that and just don't say it so much. But the Seahawks that he played with were such an amazing team. And whenever I'd watch him play, he never passed that eye test. Like his stats would be great and the team was doing amazing, but that defense really carried them. And I don't think he was ever that good of a quarterback. I think he just had an.
I do believe that Russell Wilson was pretty good. I do feel he is going to be a future first ballot Hall of Famer, but I do agree with
Yeah.
you to the point where it's like, I do believe that Russell Wilson got a little bit too much credit for the success Seattle had. And from listening to a lot of former teammates and Marshawn Lynch talk about what happened during that Super Bowl against the Patriots, where we all
Oh,
remember it's the
yeah.
one, yeah, they don't give it to Marshawn. Like, a lot of people feel it was
Oh,
a lot of politics involved in that because they
yeah.
didn't want a guy like Marshawn Lynch to have the image that he had, and with him, not talking to the media that whole entire season.
Yeah.
They didn't want to have somebody of his image winning Super Bowl MVP, and they wanted Russell Wilson to win it. They wanted him to have that shine, and you know after that Super Bowl, Russell Wilson pretty much broke up the Legion of Boom because like they wanted to have a players
Yeah.
only meeting at some point during that next season following that Super Bowl loss. And Pete Carroll said, y'all can have this meeting, but leave Russ out of it. You feel me? And everybody was like, okay,
Oh,
so y'all going to give Russell Wilson this preferential treatment. You're going to treat him differently from everybody else. And from that point on, everybody just lost respect in the locker room for Pete Carroll. And, Russell Wilson kind of was like, he was a little conceited because to play quarterback, you got to be able to get along with people. Like, you got to be somewhat relatable. You feel me? And Russell Wilson
yeah.
is one of those dudes where he didn't really relate to everybody in a sense. Like, he wasn't like a bad person. Like, he didn't have like the same things that people accuse Shadur of. It's just that, he had a hard time relating to people. And, for somebody like Marshawn Lynch trying to get a hold of him and you got to go through a representative to talk to him, it kind of definitely set people off the wrong way towards him. And then he gets to Denver. He had his own locker room, his own office separate from the team. So it's just kind of like Russell Wilson is too much of an individual to still be a great quarterback at this level. And I kind of feel like that's what held him back. Like, great player, but as a leader, probably wasn't the best in that department.
Yeah. Yeah, that really came through when we saw him in Denver. I was so shocked that he left Seattle. I don't know. I hadn't been following the locker room and all that other news that closely because I didn't know about that players only meeting. But that really came out when you went to Denver. And yeah, I loved Bomani Jones. The way he talked about him was he used to be the Carlton from the Fresh Prince, and then now he's being the Carlton when he's like all cool and stuff. It doesn't communicate it well, me telling you that here, but like, yeah, he had this whole. It seemed like maybe he wanted to fit in, like with the thing about the Ciara and like a birthday party and the high knees and the airplane thing. Like I think he's just a little bit odd, maybe. And yeah, he definitely was set up as an outsider at Denver, and that was never going to work. And it's crazy he's at Pittsburgh now for the league minimum, or the 1 million, whatever. It is really wild. I never thought he'd end up there, but yeah, I never knew he was that outsider type of guy when he was playing at Seattle. Like there, everybody just loved it because I was living there at the time. It was Legion of Boom, Beast Mode, and like just we finally won a Super Bowl. And yeah,
And what was crazy
that
about the
makes a lot.
way the Seattle situation ended was that it pretty much came down to Russell Wilson saying, "Hey, like it's either me or Pete Carroll." You feel me? And when he kind of
Yeah,
crossed the line there, Pete Carroll's like, "Man, like your ass can go." You feel me? And then you see they had success with Geno Smith the following season because like
yeah,
Pete Carroll when he got, I ain't gonna say he got fired, but he kind of did pretty much. Like he kind of just got too old. You feel me? Like he was still a good head coach in
yeah,
terms of being able to motivate you. Like people always say, like, one thing about Pete Carroll, like, he was always happy. Like, he'll never make you feel down on yourself. You feel me? Like, he's always going to make you feel like you're a better player than what you are. But, like, there was a stretch when Russell Wilson kind of was carrying Seattle offensively because the defenses were always inept. The offensive lines were not really that good. But that's because Pete Carroll had so much of a say, and the personnel, who they drafted, who they signed in free agency. So when, like, the general manager, I believe his name is John Snyder, threatened to leave and go to Detroit, that's when Seattle's owners and the guys above him say, like, we're gonna let him run the team. Pete, you just coach. And that's how you got the team that you have now. And with that trade, originally Denver didn't even want Russell Wilson. Like, they wanted Aaron Rodgers. That's why they hired Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah, so it's like they couldn't get Aaron Rodgers. So it was like, okay, we just gonna get Russ, and that's the next best thing. But you look at Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh right now. Like, people kind of said the same stuff he was doing in Denver, Seattle, he was kind of doing with Pittsburgh. Like, he it's not that he didn't get along with the guys in the locker room, but he got along more with Mike Tomlin than he did the other players in the locker room. Meanwhile, you see, like, how people talk about Justin Fields. Like, you see the way the players, look at Justin Fields. Like, you can see, like, it's some admiration there. You can see that, like, they really like Justin Fields. With Russell Wilson, it's like, he's a cool guy, but it's like, you're going to play harder for somebody who you relate more to, who you got more in common with, and somebody who you got a better connection with, versus a guy who kind of is like a celebrity quarterback in a sense. He had, like, his own, like, guys around him. When he got to Denver, he had his own paparazzi. Like, Russell Wilson's a cool dude, good person. I felt like he had a pretty good player. Like, when I think of my childhood, like, I always think of Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, because, like, those were the most dominant quarterbacks that I've seen growing up. But now looking back on it, it's kind of a little bit disappointing how Russell Wilson's career is coming to an end, because, like, most people are probably going to think of Russell Wilson for his final 3-4 years in the league, instead of thinking about the Russell Wilson that we saw during his prime in Seattle.
Yeah. I was so shocked that he left Seattle. But then hearing all this stuff out of the locker room, it makes sense in hindsight. And I'm surprised more people don't talk about the Broncos wanting Aaron Rodgers first, because that also was setting up Russell just to not succeed at all, because he was their second choice. Kind of like when Brock Purdy was told by Shanahan that they were going to try to get Brady, but if they couldn't, that Purdy should still be the starter. Like, I think that undermined some of his success, even though they did really well last season. But yeah, I think that really affects, how people succeed when they aren't the first choice and they know it.
Yeah, like, like, just when Russell Wilson got traded to Denver, everybody was like, oh man, like, Russ is the missing piece. They're going to be Super Bowl contenders. And, like, at first I was like, yeah, but
I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, it's like, the more you get into it, it kind of was like the New York Jets last year. Like, they just felt too good to be true. It's like, you felt like something was bound to go wrong.